People think that truck drivers are just guys who sit around, drive, and drink bad coffee. Let me interrupt you there. I've spent more nights in this truck than in my own bed. I know every gas station between Texas and Iowa. And yes, it changes you. This job didn't make me rich. It made me tired, sarcastic, and somehow better at life. I got lost, froze, broke down in the middle of nowhere, and somehow still showed up the next day. People told me that driving a truck was a job with no future. It's funny that I ended up at the end of that road. One night, I made a joke on the radio. Someone laughed, then someone else, and suddenly people started listening. This isn't a story about how I quit driving a truck. It's a story about why I never did. Let me tell you what the road really teaches you. Part 1. The beginning of the journey. Joe often says, "I don't get paid to drive. I get paid to survive everything that happens while I'm driving." Joe's first day as a truck driver was easy. So simple that he got lost before even leaving the parking lot. He circled the warehouse for 20 minutes until a security guard asked, "Are you delivering something?" Joe replied, "Yeah, my dignity." The first legendary adventure, GPS versus Joe. One day, the GPS said, "Make a U-turn." Joe looked at his 18-wheel truck. He looked at the narrow road. He looked at the sign, "No trucks," and thought, well, it didn't say no confident trucks. 15 minutes later, the sheriff showed up. A farmer showed up. Another truck driver appeared who just stopped to watch the show. The sheriff asked, "Son, what are you doing?" Joe, "Learning." If your GPS says shortcut, it's a trap. If a truck stop looks too clean, it's dangerous. If the night is quiet, something strange is about to happen. A roadside anecdote. Joe once said to a newcomer, "The road will test you." The newbie, "How?" Joe, "By making sure you really need the bathroom, exactly when there's nowhere to stop." Small victory, big success. Over time, Joe stopped panicking, began to laugh at problems, realized that every mishap is a future story. And one evening at a truck stop, someone said, "Hey, you're Joe Davis, right? The guy with the crazy stories." Joe smiled. Because sometimes success is when people recognize you not by your face, but by your stories. Part 2. More American humor, less common sense. Joe Davis always said, "If trucking was easy, Starbucks baristas would be doing it." Story number 1. Coffee that has seen hell. Joe doesn't drink coffee. He survives on coffee. At a truck stop in Arizona, he asked, "How's the coffee?" The cashier replied, "Strong." Joe took a sip and saw his past, his future, and a couple of things he hadn't planned on. He thought, "This ain't coffee. This is legal meth with a lid." From that day on, Joe has measured coffee not by taste, but by the phrase, "Will this keep me alive till New Mexico?" Story number 2. Cop, radar, and confidence. At 3 a.m., he is stopped by a cop. Cop, "You know how fast you were going?" Joe, "Fast enough to feel something again?" The cop looks at the truck. He looks at Joe and says, "Step out of the vehicle." Joe gets out, slowly, because his knees aren't what they were in 2005. Cop, "Where are you headed?" Joe, "Mentally, home. Physically, Nebraska. Emotionally, Somewhere between a gas station and a bad decision. The cop is silent. Then he laughs. Slow it down, trucker. Joe drives on, thinking, that joke just saved me $300. Story number 3. Dispatch is not your friend. The dispatcher writes, "This load is easy." Joe knew right away that this was a lie. Easy means a trip to a city where all the roads are narrow. A customer who should be there in 5 minutes, never. And a dock built in 1972 for trucks, not trailers. Joe stands, looks at the dock, and says, "Whoever designed this has never met a truck or happiness." Story number 4. Trucker food math. Joe knows the rule. If a place smells like grease and regret, you're in the right spot. He orders bacon, eggs, something fried, and something else because why not? Waitress, you want a salad? Joe, ma'am, I'm a trucker, not a hostage. Trucker wisdom. GPS is just a suggestion. Just around the corner means 45 minutes. If a driver says, "I'll be right back," he's already in a different time zone. The truck is your office, your home, and sometimes your therapist. Small success. Joe didn't become a millionaire. He didn't buy a yacht. He didn't find himself. But he knows every road between Texas and Iowa, has stories that even cops laugh at, and can say, "I make a living. I make people laugh, and my truck still runs." That's success, buddy. Joe says, "People ask me when I'm going to quit trucking. I say, when the road stops telling me jokes." Part 3. Snow, idiots, and why trucks don't belong in cities. Joe Davis always says, "The road doesn't care about your plans, especially in winter." Story number 1. Snow plus Texas equals panic. The first time Joe encountered real snow, he was in Colorado. A Texan in the snow is like a cowboy on skates, or Wi-Fi in the desert. Joe looks at the road. It is white. The sky is white. His thoughts are obscene. Someone shouts over the radio, "Road's icy!" Joe, "Buddy, this ain't icy. This is frozen regret." He was driving 20 miles per hour, but his heart was going 120. Story number 2. Four-wheelers, enemies of civilization. Joe calls regular cars four-wheelers. They cut tires, brake sharply, and think that the laws of physics are just recommendations. One guy in a pickup truck cuts Joe off and brakes. Joe says, "Congratulations, genius. You just challenged 80,000 pounds of bad mood." Joe didn't honk. He just watched. Sometimes that's enough. Story number 3. Big truck, tiny city. Dispatcher, "Delivery is downtown." Joe, "Downtown where?" Dispatcher, "You'll see." He pulls up. The roads are narrow. The buildings are close together. People look as if to say, "Was this part of the parade?" A woman shouts, "You can't park here!" Joe, "Ma'am, if I could park somewhere else, I'd already be gone." Story number 4. Customers live in a different reality. Customer, "Just back it in." Joe looks at the dock, at the fence, at the wall, at the pole. Joe, "Sure. Want me to fold the truck too?" Client, "Other drivers do it." Joe, "Yeah,
And some people wrestle alligators. Doesn't mean it's smart. On the radio at 1:47 a.m. Anyone got coffee? Another voice. Brother, if you're asking, you're already too late. Joe laughs. Because it's true.
One day, a new guy says to Joe, "Man, I don't know if I can do this job." Joe replies, "You won't at first. That's the point." And for the first time, Joe realized he was no longer just a driver. He was a veteran of the road. Part 4. Midnight truck stops and people who shouldn't be awake. Joe Davis says, "Nothing good happens after midnight, except truck stop stories." Story number 1. Midnight truck stop. A truck stop at 2:13 a.m. is not a place. It's a state of mind. There, one guy eating a hot dog who looks older than Joe. Someone is loudly watching wrestling. A coffee machine is making noise as if it's about to summon demons. Joe thinks, if I disappear, this is where it happened. Story number 2. The Man with Theories. A man sits down next to Joe. Without saying hello, "You know the government watches truckers, right?" Joe, "Sir, I can barely watch myself at 3 a.m. The man continues, "Flat Earth, fake moon landing, birds aren't real." Joe slowly sips his coffee and says, "Buddy, after this coffee, nothing is real." Story number 3. A $14 shower and hope. A shower at a truck stop is either paradise or an adventure. Joe walks in. There is hot water. There is pressure. Joe smiles. God is real. Suddenly, the water turns cold, then hot, then cold again. Joe, pick a side, Satan. Story number 4. Food that looks Blader map and literally not. Story number 4. Food that looks just food of us like. Joe thinks, Joe forecast as it came with her truthin' sliding before. Joe thinks, Joe food get to me. Story number 4. Food Joe orders a burger. It's big. Very big. Joe looks at the burger. The burger looks back at Joe. Joe, all right, let's see who survives. After half, I regret nothing, except everything. Story number 5. Sleeping in the cab. Sleeping in a truck is, a truck starts up nearby. You wake up. A door slams. You wake up. Silence. You wake up because it's suspicious. Joe lies there and thinks, this mattress has seen more pain than my ex-wife. Every trucker knows. There is that truck stop where something always happens. There is a guy who never leaves the cab. There is a legend about a driver who found a clean toilet at 3 a.m. A lie, but a beautiful one. Joe is sitting in the cab. It's nighttime. The radio is silent, and he thinks, yeah, it's weird. Yeah, it's hard. But damn, this road feels like home. Joe says, people think truckers are lonely. Nah, we just choose our silence. Part 5. Breakdowns, bad luck, and why quitting is always an option, but never happens. Joe Davis says, every trucker has that day, the one that makes you Google jobs that don't involve wheels. Story number 1. Breakdown in the middle of nowhere. State, Wyoming. Time, 3:26 a.m. Surroundings, wind, dark, and absolutely nothing but mistakes in life. The truck makes a sound. Clunk. Sss. Silence. Joe. No. No. Big Red, don't do this to me. I defended you online. He leaves. It's so cold that thoughts freeze first. Joe looks under the hood like a doctor without a diploma, a mechanic without hope, and says, "Yep, that's broken." Joe calls the dispatcher. Dispatcher, can you still deliver? Joe, buddy, the truck ain't delivering itself to the repair shop. Dispatcher, how long do you think? Joe, somewhere between 2 hours and retirement. Tow truck, the most expensive Uber. When the tow truck arrived, Joe almost cried. Tow truck driver, you're lucky. Joe, how? Driver, the last guy waited 9 hours. Joe, wow, I feel blessed. Joe sits in the tow truck cab and thinks, I could quit. Get a normal job, sleep in a real bed, talk to humans daily. Then he looks out the window. The road, the horizon. Silence. Joe, nah, I'd miss this mess. Story number 2. Repairs that hurt. The mechanic looks at the truck. He looks at Joe. He says, it's going to cost. Joe, how much? The mechanic gives a figure. Joe, can I pay in personality and trauma? Mechanic, cash or card? A small but important victory 18 hours later. The truck starts again. Joe is back behind the wheel. The coffee is still bad. Joe smiles. Because if you survived the breakdown, didn't quit, and you're still joking, you're a real tracker. Messages. Joe says, the road tried to break me. All it did was give me another story. He starts up Big Red. He turns on the radio and drives on. Part 6. From just a trucker to, hey, I know that guy. Joe always said, I talk too much for a guy who spends his life alone. And that's what changed everything. Story number 1. CB radio that broke the silence. It all started by accident. Night. An empty road. Joe, as usual, grumbles into his CB radio. Heads up, boys. Wyoming's colder than my ex's heart, and the coffee at mile 212 tastes like regret. Laughter on the radio. Then another voice. Then another. Someone says, Man, say that again. I'm crying. Joe didn't plan to be funny. He was just telling the truth. Story number 2. You should start a channel. At the truck stop, a guy says to Joe, Dude, have you ever thought about TikTok or YouTube? Joe, I barely think about tomorrow. But that same evening, he recorded a video. Without lighting, no editing, with a cup of bad coffee. He said, If you're a trucker and you're tired, congratulations. You're doing it right. Story number 3. The video that went viral. A week later, 10,000 views, comments. People wrote, This is exactly how it is. Man, I thought I was the only one. Joe looked at the screen and thought, Wait,
People like this? Story number 4. People started to recognize him. At the gas station, someone shouted, "Yo! You Joe Davis?" Joe: "Depends. Are you a cop or a fan?" Photo. Handshake. Someone asks for the story about GPS and the cow. Joe understands. His jokes are no longer just jokes. They are the common language of trackers. One evening, Joe is sitting in his cab.
He reads a comment. "Man, your stories got me through a rough week." Joe puts his phone down. He looks at the road and says quietly, "Damn." Because, for the first time, he feels his journey helps others. He still has his old truck, bad coffee, breakdowns. But now he has a voice. People waiting for a new story. The feeling that he belongs. Joe says, "Turns out I wasn't lost on the road. I was just collecting stories." He smiles. He starts up Big Red and drives on. No longer just a truck driver, but Joe Davis, the same guy with the stories. Part 7. Success isn't the destination. It's staying on the road. Joe Davis says, "People think success means you stop driving. Nah. Success is choosing why you keep going." A morning that makes everything clear. Morning in Kansas. The sun is just rising. The road is empty. Joe sits in the cab with his coffee, which still tastes like fatigue mixed with hope. He starts streaming. No script, no filters. And he says, "Morning, drivers. If you're tired, sore, and questioning your life choices, you're not alone." Comments pour in. Laughter. "Same, brother. Stay safe." Joe now has followers, recognition, offers to move out of the way. They tell him, "You made it. You can quit trucking." Joe looks at Big Red. He runs his hand over the steering wheel and replies, "Quit what? This is the thing." Joe understood one simple thing. Success is not when things become easy, and it's not when you have a lot of money, but when you wake up and don't betray yourself. He still curses at GPS, hates bad coffee, laughs at the absurdity of the road. And that makes him real. Messages. At the end of the stream, Joe says, "If nobody told you this today, you're doing fine, even if it doesn't feel like it." He turns off his phone. He starts the engine. The radio quietly plays country music. Big Red pulls away. "I didn't find success on the road. I built it 1 mile at a time."